Hey everybody, I'm Matt Keim. I'm a student and composer here at Northeastern. As you can see, I'm going to be talking about the process involved in creating a piece of concert music as a student at Northeastern. And I'd also like to make it one of my main points that music isn't magic, it's just a lot of work. And that work is pretty good for us music tech majors and composers, because we get the opportunity to get our music played, which is the best and most important part of the music writing process. But the kind of original reason for this presentation is to reveal the supposed magic behind music. Now, by no means is my process of writing music the same as anyone else's, but most composers I know seem to follow some of the same steps at one time or another. Music starts with a concept. A concept is just some idea of how you want your piece of music to end up. In my case, the concept of my piece happened to relate to the NBC logo, which is why it's projected behind me. To explain the connection between my music and NBC, I need to dive the tiniest bit into music theory. If you've ever learned a little bit of music theory, then you might know that there are names for the amount of space or interval between notes in music. It's a great boon to musicians and composers to be able to identify these intervals by ear. And a handy way I was taught to identify one of them was to listen for the NBC theme. NBC. The interval between N and B is a major sixth. And the concept for my piece kind of started with that. I was just planning on using a whole bunch of major sixths. That's kind of where it started. The other idea I kind of messed around with was a series of low notes on a keyboard I was playing. My roommate happened to walk in as I was playing these notes. He's like, "That sounds like a funeral march." So thus, my piece, NBC's Funeral March, was born. Granted, musical concepts aren't always this frivolous, but in my case, I found it compelling enough, so I kind of went with it. Aha, the drafting. It's the longest step in the music writing process. This is the part where the hard work comes in. For me, it involves sitting at a keyboard, hashing out musical ideas, mostly hitting random notes. I then put the musical ideas I deem excellent, or maybe just acceptable if a deadline's approaching, onto either staff paper or notation software in my computer. Melody, rhythm, form, harmony, instrumentation, text, sound sources, audio processing, and other such musical things come into the creation of musical ideas at this point. However, this is the step that probably seems magical to people, because how do you know what to write? I've only been really seriously writing music for 2.5 years, so I'm still very much a wide-eyed little tyke in the music world. But from what I've gathered, the actual process of creating musical ideas comes from a mixture of imagination, experience, and random luck. What also helps a whole heap is guidance and review, which is where the class I was in at the time, Composition Seminar 2 with Professor Doritas, comes in. This was the perfect opportunity to get my piece reviewed by peers and by someone with experience. The final bit in the drafting process that I'll include is the creation and editing of parts. If you're writing for instrumentalists, they need music to read from. And the little bits of ink on the page need to be able to perfectly translate the music in your brain to the music they create in the air. This requires a whole stack of rough drafts, and it hopefully minimizes any errors and optimizes the performance. Which brings us to the third step in this musical journey, which is the reading of the music. The reading is basically a practice session where the players and conductor get a chance to go through the music. For our class, we were able to get the amazing Boston Modern Orchestra project. You can see the conductor and a couple members up there. This is actually not a picture. This is a picture of another piece of mine, not the one that you'll hear a little bit at the end. This was by far the most important part of the process. It's where you find out if the music you put on the paper is going to be performed as you wanted it to. There's a whole slew of things that could go wrong. Each of the things that goes wrong eats up time and money. So getting the opportunity to experience this as a student was an incredibly insightful experience, on top of being the most real-life compositional experience I've had at this point. So it's pretty awesome. The final step is the actual performance, or in our case, it was a recording. The performance, you get a second chance. You've done the reading, your music has been played once, and you get a chance to make corrections to it. So it's this big second chance. We were able to get, for our class, the Boston Modern Orchestra Project again to record our pieces. An extra bonus of this step is you get a recording of your piece. And I'm going to highlight this with 2 audio clips here. If in the music making process of today, we have software, it'll play the music you write, but often the computer's interpretation isn't exactly the best sounding piece of music. So I'm going to play that. So that was a short clip played by my computer for your enjoyment. But the real benefit is a live recording, which is this. So to wrap this up quickly, music isn't magic, it just takes hard work, knowledge, and experience. Luckily, in the end, the hard work pays off, especially when we're given the opportunity to have our music read and performed. Just like any other field here at Northeastern, though the experiential education might not come from co-op, it is definitely an important part in the learning process. Thank you.